Hello, it's Cried here. If you've been browsing through Elden Ring content, it is likely you've stumbled upon this softcap sheet somewhere before. However, the softcap sheet is an oversimplification of the actual stat system, and what is not wrong is misleading. It's the same as teaching someone English and telling them to add s to the end of words to make them plural. Yeah, it's correct until it isn't. The plural of cat is cats, but the plural of sheep is still sheep, and the plural of goose is geese. First, I will show you the part where the softcap sheet is wrong, and then explain to you about why sticking to softcap can be detrimental. Softcap themselves are divided into major softcaps and minor softcaps. Of course, this is a bit arbitrary, but major softcaps are far bigger drop-offs and matter more. Let's take a look at the type of graph I'm going to present the softcaps in. This is the vigor graph on the wiki. As we can see here, the softcap cheat sheet actually gets the 40 and 60 vigor right here. The bars on the bottom correspond to the amount of HP you're getting for leveling up vigor. Your 56 point of vigor corresponds to 20 HP gained. The red line on top shows you your total HP pool. For example, at 60 vigor, you should have 1900 HP total from your vigor stats. I don't think this line is nearly as important, so focus on the bars on the bottom. Next, let's talk about where the softcap cheat sheet is wrong. For the next part, you might want to put on some sunglasses because it's about to get bright. Sorry, I didn't make these graphs. The link to the graph is in the description, but I'll explain what you need to know here. Okay, the first part of the graph that might be confusing is the scaling. The cumulative scaling is on the right, unlike on the vigor chart, but we're going to focus on the bars. I know there can be over 100 strength with two-handing, but the main focus is the softcaps here. You see, strength, dexterity, intelligence, faith, and arcane doesn't have a definite softcap. It depends very much on the scaling of the type of weapon. Physical attack scaling of strength and dexterity on default and unique weapons, which are weapons that can be infused with Ash of War, follows this graph for scaling gains. I've labeled the softcaps for you. 18 and 80 points of stat has a major softcap, while 58 point of stat has a minor softcap. But these values are different for different scaling types. Let's check out heavy, keen, or occult weapons. Now the major softcap is at 20 and 80, while the minor is at 56. If you're using a heavy weapon, your major strength softcap is at 20, while the weapon on default scaling has its major softcap on 18. You see the difference? It's not a lot, but it's there. The stat itself doesn't have a strict softcap rule. It depends on the type of scaling. Next, we can check out the graph of a quality weapon. We see that the softcap is at 16, 58, and 80. As an additional note, using the Knight Rider glaive from my last video as an example, quality tends to be really weak with lower levels because of its low base damage, and really strong at higher levels because it gets more scaling out of stats. How much damage you scale is based off of your base attack and scaling rating. So if your base attack is low, you get less stats out of the same scaling rating. Also, I'm talking about high levels like having over 70 dex and strength. Now we're getting to the even more interesting parts. If your weapon has dual damage types, the chart completely changes. The biggest change is that you have a major softcap at 50 points. This applies to intelligence and faith if you're running a magic, code, flame, or sacred infusion. Let's use meteoric ore blade, a unique weapon with dual damage type as an example. The physical side of the weapon scales normally with the default scaling, while the intelligence and faith side of the weapon scale to the magic chart. One more thing you will notice from the scaling numbers is strength increases physical attack by a lot more than intelligence increases magical attack, even though the meteoric ore blade has C rating for both of these stats. Yes, there can be slight differences in scaling even when both ratings are the same, but not to this extent. I picked this weapon on purpose to illustrate another point. When a weapon has split scaling like this, the strength or dexterity portion tends to increase your weapon attack more, while the intelligence or faith portion tends to scale the weapon art better, as long as the weapon art has a magical component. So try not to pick the magic infusion if you're not using a magic Ash of War. As for status buildups with arcane, the graph actually has a starting point you want to get over. If you want to invest in arcane, your weapon needs to first scale to arcane for this to affect the status effect, so investing in arcane won't make your Moonveil do more bleed damage. The interesting thing here is you're encouraged to have 45 points of Arcane. The first 25 points are like payments you must invest in order to get the juicy portion out of 26 to 45 points. Reaching for 60 points is also not a bad idea here. Also, Arcane works for Poison, Bleed, and Madness. Those of you who want to abuse this for something like Frostbite or Scarlet Rot, sorry. For Glintstone Staffs and Sacred Seals, I have 2 comprehensive guides for more detailed information down in the description below if you haven't seen them yet. But let us cover some of the issues with the soft cap sheet. First of all, staffs and seals are divided into front-loaded and back-loaded with other weird scaling in between, like the dual attribute staffs or seals that soft cap at 45 and 45. Putting faith and intelligence at 60 and 80 is misleading, because depending on the seal or staffs themselves, some staffs and seals don't want to be used before 60 because they are backloaded. The first 60 points are like the payment for the next 20, just like how Arcane works. The soft cap cheat sheet doesn't even have the 45 breakpoints for intelligence or faith. Here is a comment on my staff video asking about the Albinauric staff and why I placed the Albinauric staff's intelligence breakpoint at 45 in my video instead of 60. Another example would be the Clawmark seal, which scaled to 45 strength and 45 faith breakpoint as well, just in case someone tells me, oh, it's because Arcane stopped scaling at 45. On the other hand, the Prince of Death staff, which scales to intelligence and faith, soft caps at 80. Remember what I said about English and plural nouns? Okay, so after we went through the weapon scaling, this is what we end up with. But this isn't the end yet, because next I'm going to show you why blindly following soft cap can be detrimental. An important concept to understand is marginal utility. Let's take a look at the Arcane chart for status buildup again. While each level from 26 to 45 increases the buildup by the same amount, each level is actually weaker than the previous. Let's take a look at an exaggerated but hopefully easy to understand example. Let's say you started out with 1000 HP, and then you gain 1000 more, which puts you at 2000 HP. You take 100% more hits to kill. Basically, you're twice as hard to kill since you need to take double the hits. Now that you have 2000 HP, if we give you 1000 more HP, you have 3000 HP. Compared to 2000 HP, you only take 50% more hits to kill. Even when you gain 1000 HP in both instances, the second instance is less effective. So how does this factor into soft caps? Let's make a crowd favorite Moonveil sorcery build. We will call this build 1. The guy that made this build decided to chase 80 intelligence for maximum damage. Now this build 2 decided to spend 10 points of intelligence on some HP and endurance to be tankier. We record the AR for each build's Moonveil and use the best non-Lusat staff, and then pit the 2 builds against each other, like a PvP showdown. We use the HP and negation of the build to find effective HP, and then find the percent damage the build must do to defeat the enemy. For the negation, I opted to use the average negation in order to make it standardized, like you're fighting all opponents instead of just the other build to be more realistic. Using less percent damage means you need to do less damage to beat the opponent. We see that the build that has an odd 54 vigor and 70 intelligence comes out on top in all 3 instances, whether it's purely sorcery, Moonveil, or half of each to take down the enemy. Okay, someone is going to protest. That's cause build 1 is dumb. There's no investment in armor or HP. Hitting 60 vigor is more important than 80 intelligence. Blah blah. So let's make a build 3 by lowering intelligence and giving the build more vigor while still using this better armor set. It turns out that build 2 still beats build 3 if it was a pure spell contest or 50-50 Moonveil and spell contest. Build 3 does beat build 2 if it's a Moonveil trade only though. Vigor also suffers from marginal utility. You see here that the 60th point of vigor is less than half as effective as the 50th point of vigor in terms of making you tankier, even though 13 is more than half of 24. Soft cap is a guidepost. It's not the law. Don't let yourself get restricted by it. Even if you're using an armor optimizer, ask yourself, what are you optimizing for? Let's return to build 2 and build 3. You see, even with one single build, the answer can be different for 2 different players. Are you a player that mostly plays Moonveil and uses spell as support? Or are you a player that mostly spams sorcery and uses Moonveil as support? Despite using the same equipment and spells, your playstyle can be different from the person making the guide, so when you optimize, remember it is about suiting your needs. Let's think about another example. If you're optimizing for poise, you're obviously going to see higher poise pieces when you're trying to maximize your poise, or high poise to weight ratio pieces like Veteran's Armor. But don't forget, there is always a trade-off. If you're gaining something, you're losing something elsewhere. Let's use the popular 4 Bull Gold set plus the Bull Gold Talisman as an example. Is this automatically the strongest defensive setup? No. Heavier armor tends to have a higher physical defense without having a much higher magic defense or resistance than light armor. What if you could have saved endurance for other stats to invest in? What if you're fighting a pure mage today, casting spells that is more likely going to kill you before doing 90 poise damage? 130 poise would essentially be wasteful, because that extra poise is unused. You would achieve the same result with less poise, where you could have spent on other stats or another talisman. Think about what you're struggling to deal with and ask yourself whether the trade-off is worth it. You can't have everything, and that is great because it means that there is a variety to optimization, so not everyone just ends up with the same answer. Let me ask you a question. When you beat your opponent or a boss with 1% HP left, is it just luck? No. Your dead enemy might think you got lucky, but it's your effort that allowed you to win. Even if others can't see you putting in the effort, you will be rewarded for it. Don't hate the details. Learn to understand it and make it your weapon. It will be a blade those who have never worked for will not be able to wield. Some people might dismiss Elden Ring or any other game as just a game, but we all play games for different reasons. Whether it's for the story, for the journey, for relaxing, for spending time with friends, or even meeting new ones. Like many things in life, you will see the results only if you invest the time. Don't ever let someone else put you down for spending time doing the things you love. And if things are really too hard and complicated, or you're too busy, it's okay. Don't worry, because sometimes all we need is some help. So, I offer you an accord. Subscribe, and I will be your guide to this amazing world. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Krite, signing out.